Hey there, everybody. We are live. This is John Gums on Dakota Grappler, basically live.com, whatever you want to call it. We've been doing this for a long time. This is episode 126 of Dakota Grappler Live. I mentioned I'm John Gums. On my right, I have Bill Holton, my right-hand man who knows everything college wrestling-wise. And then I've got a special guest who I'm looking forward to talk to tonight, Andy Hrovat, who is a 2008 Olympian and has been around in the program for a long time. Watched him wrestle, very excited because there are several guys on that 2008 team that's branched off to do other things, professional wrestling and MMA and lots of different things. He has got a wide background. I'm hoping you guys are excited as I am. I really want to talk to him today and get him brewing about the Spartan wrestling stuff, about his time at Edward, going blank here.
St. Ed's, yeah.
St. Ed's, yep. And then over in Russia, the time he spent over there. So you can kind of brew in the back of your mind a few questions there. But I'll have basically those that don't know me. I know I talked to Andy beforehand. Again, I am living in North Dakota. If you guys are from other places, I live in Bismarck. I teach and coach and just love wrestling. I want to promote it. That's kind of my main goal. If anybody out there needs help promoting wrestling, that's what it's all about. Just make sure we get those young guys out wrestling. I really want to promote women's wrestling because those are the new wrestling moms that are out there. I got a sophomore that's wrestling, so I'm deep in everything. I'm not coaching right now, but I'll help out anywhere possible. Again, Bill, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, quick. I'm Bill Holton here. I'm coming at you from Central North Dakota. Just a long time wrestling fan. Obviously wrestled, coached. Kind of ended my stint now as a wrestling parent, and just like to get on here and talk about wrestling. I feel really fortunate to be able to get Andy on here today. I've been, following what Andy has been doing for quite a few years. I talked to Jake Herbert a number of years ago, one night coming back from a little kid's practice. And he kind of put a lot of the stuff that you guys were talking about and working on at that time with the double leg ninja program and base wrestling. And it just hits so close to home. I think it's, such great ideas. And I think this is going to be real eye-opening for a lot of people that, we get a lot of people that watch this that are wrestling parents, wrestling coaches, wrestlers. I think there's just a lot to be gained from this conversation tonight.
Definitely. Well, Andy, just my first question for you is just introduce yourself and tell us where you started wrestling, kind of your home area, where you're at now, and then I'll have questions from there. I know Bill will have several too.
Cool. Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to talk this subject. Obviously, I have the same passion as you guys, and from the sounds of it, we want the same things to promote the sport, get people involved, whether it's, the new wrestling moms, women, all the boys out there trying to become men. So we have very similar mindset there. So it's great to talk with people like that. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. My name is Andy Hrovat. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. And, I started wrestling when I was 5. I was told I was too young to play T-ball. I was born in January. The cutoff was December. And so my dad's friend, was like, hey, I'm a coach at the local Y. Bring him down. He could practice with us in January when he's 5. And, it doesn't matter what age he is. And that's not a problem. And so he let me wrestle. And from day one, I was hooked and kept going back all the way until I retired at 31.
Retired. Never retired from the sport.
Well, competitive, right?
Yeah, as the competitive side, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
But competitive inside instead of outside, mentally versus physically.
For sure, right? But I mean, I was obviously involved in the sport. I coached for the next 8 years, and like Bill said, built a couple businesses, and now I'm doing it with the Spartan brand.
Okay. Yeah. So now, what was your experience through grade school and going into high school? Were you winning right away? Did you stumble through the blocks? Do you have good friends that you traveled with, or tell me a little bit about your high school story and grade school?
Yeah. So grade school, like I said, I started at the West End YMCA, and that was very much from what I remember that age. It was just like a couple things here and there at the Y, maybe another Y in Cleveland, nothing much. they dropped the program, and I ended up going to another Y that was maybe like 25 minutes away. It's called West End Y, and Tony Hunter was the coach. His son ended up wrestling. He went to St. Joe's in Cleveland. They were really good. When I was a kid, he ended up going to Indiana with Bill Spleet, and he also went to school with Steve St. John, Dan St. John, who ended up going to Arizona State, national champ, All-Americans down there. So this YMCA was, Coach Hunter was a great coach, really knew how to, just develop athletes. And, I look back at it, and he was, very much into like calisthenics and being able to move and just getting people to train. It was almost like a drill sergeant. But it was really fun. He made it fun. We enjoyed it. He had games and stuff, and so we always had fun. I also had a group of kids. My dad was friends with them, and I was friends, and we'd go at that age, like between 8 and 12. I was going to tournaments all over Ohio, Pennsylvania. Anywhere we could wrestle, we'd wrestle Friday night, Saturday, maybe a Sunday tournament, swinging on the way home. And, my dad didn't know what he was doing, but he took me to tournaments. I loved it. He never forced me to do it. I was always excited. I had fun. My friends were there. But, obviously to me, that's not the greatest way to develop, but it was enjoyable, right? Like, I didn't hate it. It's not for everybody, but I really liked it. And that took me to essentially junior high, which, those kids tournaments at that age are thin.
Mm-hmm. So when did you realize that you wanted to take it to the next level, wrestling college? When did you realize that?
I was, obviously, like you said earlier, with the lack of internet, people wouldn't understand it. Kids wouldn't understand it today. But, I was just into the age group. I did what I could at my age group. When it came time to go into high school, I was on the east side of Cleveland, and I could have went to the school my sister went to, like Catholic. They were co-ed. The public school where I lived didn't have wrestling, so that wasn't going to be an option. But my dad went to high school with the St. Ed's coach. They grew up in an ethnic Slovenian neighborhood in northeast Cleveland, and that's where I grew up. And so, he contacted my dad. He knew I was a wrestler, and he was like, "Hey, send him to St. Ed's to at least check the school out." And so the day I go to check the school out, obviously he probably set it up with my dad. Said, "Hey, come this day." The day I come, ESPN's there. I'm at practice. I'm working out with the team. The next, in a day or two, St. Ed's was wrestling Walsh Jesuit. They were number 1, 2 in the country at the time. And so I'm like watching all this unfold. I'm like, no, this is where I'm going to school. And so once I entered St. Ed's, the expectation was, if you really want to wrestle, you're going to be state champ. If you really, really want to wrestle, you're going to be multiple state champ. If you want to go to college, you're doing Fargo, all that stuff. And so that's where I really started getting the idea of being able to wrestle at the next level. Like, it wasn't anything like Olympics or anything. It was just like, I think I could go do this in college. I think I could be successful in college. And so that's when that seed was planted.
Well, I tell you what, that seed is a great seed, because I go into coaches' rooms and listen a lot. And great example, Schumacher, we had him on. Bismarck High's wrestling coach, head wrestling coach. He mentions this all the time. We don't train to be state champions. We train tough enough that you're going to be up on that wall as a national champion. And that's beyond high school. His vision is much greater than that, which I think a lot of coaches could take that advice and say, guess what? If you can bring some of your wrestlers to that next level, it's phenomenal what your team can do, because state champion is just small. It's just a small part of it. So true.
Right. Well, I'm also on the mindset that you have to have that attitude, but you also have to create a training environment that everybody could participate and get the benefits out. Because not everyone's going to have the same goal. So you could definitely foster an environment to boost participation by showing people the benefits of what the sport can do for their life, who may not have the ambition to go fight, but you also have that room for the best of the best to say, look, I could take this and I could go do this in the future and make it a different lifestyle, per se.
Definitely. Definitely. Bill?
Yeah. Hey, Andy, give us some. I think probably a lot of that came from what you were just talking about. What was it like being coached by Coach Hrovat? I mean, that's a legend in the sport, and obviously, people in North and South Dakota don't always catch on to who the top high school coaches are across the country. But I mean, there's no doubt it's a legend. I mean, the amount of college and international wrestlers that have come out of that program is pretty deep. So that had to have been, sometimes we wonder, man, it's just a stroke of great luck. But I mean, that's a guy that had to have really impacted your life.
Yeah, no, Coach Hrovat was unbelievable. And, coming out of St. Ed's, obviously it's such a storied program, built by Howard Ferguson. He reached out to so many people in all aspects of life to say, hey, how do I build a program? What are the principles to build it upon? And how could you make that last forever? And so, Coach Hrovat knew those principles, worked with, Howard, and then obviously used for him, it was used his faith and used his background into Marines to build a program to produce, I mean, not just amazing wrestlers, but like there's just so many people that came through that program that became doctors, engineers, just amazing family men. And that's the biggest testament of the program. But for me, I was fortunate enough to live on the way from his house to St. Ed's because he still lived around the old neighborhood. And so I lived, 3-4 blocks off the highway. He'd swing off the highway, pick me up, go right back on, take me to St. Ed's. He was always the first one in the work, right? Like if you want to talk work ethic, first one in there, right? Every day. So I was first one in school every single day for 4 years. Well, for the first 2 years with Coach Hrovat, right? And I got to spend every day going to school, just listening to him and understanding, like, he was there at that point, probably 10, 12 years. And, he saw so many great people go through that program, and I was able to, absorb that knowledge and understanding of, what it was going to take to be successful as a wrestler, successful as a student, successful in life. And so, my 4 years at St. Ed's, like, really set a foundation for, so many big parts of my life that, I would say it's the best decision I've ever made in my life. At that point, like choosing to go to St. Ed's was a game changer. It's just, I'm blessed, and it obviously made me who I am.
Yeah, I can believe it. So talk just a little bit about your college career, right? Obviously went to University of Michigan, 3-time All-American, had a pretty good career. And then obviously we can go on from that. Made another jump. It's just amazing how you can see people keep leveling up, and I'd like to we got to talk about how that all happens.
Yeah. So so I ended up going to Michigan. I always had a connection to Michigan. People think it's strange growing up in Ohio, but I always had a connection to Michigan. Originally, I thought I was going to end up going to St. Joe's, where all those greats from my YMCA went, but they ended up going co-ed in their sports programs. It's a good case study of when you introduce women into teenage boys' lives, their focus changes, right? And you can definitely see it in all boys' schools that did that. But yeah, I ended up not going there, but I remember as a child, like if I 8th grade or 8 years old, watching Desmond Howard, Elvis Gerbach play at high school, right? And then they end up going to Michigan, winning the Heisman. They're always on the news. So as a kid, you always see the news of like, oh, what did the local stars do? I saw them play, right? Oh, they're playing at Michigan. Guys win the Heisman Trophy. And so I always had that connection going into high school. And so when it came time to pick the school, Coach Hrovat was like, give me your top 5 schools, I'll call them. He did that for every senior. Whether you thought you were going to start, wrestle, walk on, just want to go to school. He called the coach for you at that school. Said, hey, this kid wants to go there. He just wants to go there. You should know him, right? Essentially. So I ended up going to Michigan. Mike Kozicki came with me. We went to the same youth program at Longwood YMCA when we were a little older. went to high school together, went to college together. He ended up coaching there while I was training. So that was a really cool experience to have, a lifelong friend, join you at a university and be there at every level, from athlete to coach training. I love my time at Michigan. Like, I have so many great friends. The history of the program, with Flip Keen, it just runs deep. A lot of good people came out of that program. They have a great alumni group. I had lifelong friends that, whether they were graduated 10, 15 years before me, people like the Amines, right? Like, they've been, their father, son, nephew. It's just, there's so many legacy families there, the Torellas, the Brinks. I wrestled with Matt Brink, and his dad was All-American. They were the first father-son All-American. So that's really cool, to be able to witness that. But like I said earlier, my college career, I wanted to be a national champ. I did. I was 3-time All-American. I got to compete against Sanderson and Cormier. I got to lose to Josh Lundbach. I got tech fault for the first time in my career by Josh Lundbach, who was winning by 14. It gets pinned by Rob Rowan in the finals, right? That was an unbelievable match there. But I got to compete against amazing people, Victor Spada, Jasmine Smith from Iowa. And that really sparked me to Damian Hahn, Minnesota. Competing against those guys, that really sparked me to want to go to the next level. And when I was 20, my sophomore year, Coach McFarland sent us to the Olympic Training Center for the 2000 Olympic camp. And I was competing against Feda, and he wasn't at the camp. He was back at Indiana, but Charles Burton, his coach, was at camp. And every day he would pick me to train with. And I'm like, as a college kid, you're 20 years old, training every single day, every single practice. He was like, no, I like going with you. You give me a good feel. And it's like, something must be up, right? And so from that point, I was like, man, I think this Olympic thing is doable. It wasn't like I thought when I was 8, this is, going to be my path. But, by the time I was 20, I was like, I think I could compete with these guys. And even more so, the toughness part of it, to be able to jump levels, I got picked early by people at USA Wrestling to just work, right? And that's all you could get asked for. It's like, hey, do you have the opportunity to work? And so I would do training with Burton, and Williams wasn't happy. He'd lost to Slay, and so he was doing his own thing. He would have practices after our practices, and Branch was putting him through it. And so I'd go the whole practice with Burton, and next thing you know, they're like, now you got a whole other practice with Joe Williams, and I'm like, cool, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm 20 years old. You guys want me to wrestle these guys? For sure. Like 3-time NCAA champ, world bronze medalist, Olympian. So yeah, that sparked me.
Yeah, I have a North Dakota name that maybe you can remember somebody you wrestled. Trying to think of how heavy did you ever wrestle in college? What was the heaviest?
184.
184. Okay. Somebody by the name of Travis Kraft. He was at Eastern Michigan.
Oh yeah.
Because I think you might have wrestled him. What'd you say?
Yeah, my brother went to Eastern, so I had seen him. But I remember him. Yeah.
Okay, well, he's a Bismarck High grad. I was just trying to think of some people that you might recognize, some North Dakota ties.
Yeah, okay. Jake Hurt. I'm friends with Jake Hurt. Jake Hurt wrestled with him, I believe, at Northwestern.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very good. No, I'm in all the names that you can bring up. I love the name. Throw out names. I just smile inside, like, man, I watched so much of that wrestling, and you were actually part of that. That's real cool. Nope. We had Randy Lewis on a couple of weeks ago, and Randy Lewis remembered every match and every match score. I'm not sure if anybody else could do that. But 84. Now, what was the heaviest you ever wrestled? That was 84 was the heaviest?
I think so. I might have wrestled one tournament at 197. I don't think I did. The heaviest thing, I think I only wrestled 184 in college. Maybe one at 174, but I doubt it. I can't remember. But internationally, I went from 163 because I was little. I only weighed like 180 in college. That was a benefit going from high school to college. I was the first year they did 1 hour weigh-in, so I never cut any weight. But they changed the international weight, so I ended up wrestling 163 for a few years. And then when I hit about 24, I went up to 185. At the end of my career, I didn't even want to cut to 185. I just wanted to wrestle. after the Olympics for a year, so I wrestled 97 kilos, so 211.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Okay.
But I weighed about 200, and I was just like, I don't care if I'm 11 pounds lighter. I'm just going to wrestle and try to beat these guys. I need to have that break of a year after the Olympics. And then the heaviest I ever wrestled was heavyweight. And that was for a dual meet in Russia when I was coaching. And they were like, hey, we can't end the match at 4-4, right? Because we had 8 people wrestling. They're like, we need a nice match. And I was like, how much you going to pay me? So I negotiated a good deal. And I was like, good, I'll wrestle. And so they wanted me to wrestle 97. I was like, no, that guy, I wrestled that guy at 84 kilos. I wrestled at 197, at 97 kilos, so 211. I said, him and I have great matches. I said, but I'm not in shape to wrestle him. He would get me so tired. I said, I'm gonna wrestle that giant. He was about 6'5", and he was like 5th ranked guy in the world at heavyweight. But I was like, at least I said I'm not going to get tired. And they didn't really understand me, but he beat me 1-1.
That might be the excuse I use now when I wrestle. I'm training. I'm don't want to cut weight anymore. I just want to wrestle.
Right? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You pick the slow guys. You lose your speed when you get older. So as long as you pick slow guys, the guy was 6'5", I'm like, he's not going to move fast.
That's right.
Yep, down block or underhooks.
Underhooks and front headlocks. That's very good.
Front headlocking him. Like I kept front headlocking him, and I kept pulling him down. He kept trying to shoot underneath me. I couldn't turn him, but he had to pull out of the tournament. And like 2 days later, because I hurt his neck so bad. I was trying to turn with my front chest lock, and his arms were so long, but I was just prying his neck underneath his body. But I couldn't get any leverage to pop him over.
That's fun. That's fun. So let's talk a little bit. Now let's get back into the competitive part of that international career, right? Before you were wrestling heavyweight. So did you wrestle with the Cliff Keen Wrestling Club the whole time right out when you came out of and trained there and the Olympic Training Center?
I did, yeah. So I wrestled for the New York Athletic Club nationally, and then the Cliff Keen Wrestling Club. Obviously it was before regional training centers, but at that time you were allowed to be an alumni training at the university. And, really I was the first one fully training there since John Fisher. And so I ended up being there from 2002 until 2009 when I went to the training center for a year.
Okay. Yeah. So working up to let's work our way up to the Olympics. So you made a couple national teams there. How was that process?
So, as I was saying earlier, when I was young, I graduated in 4 years from Michigan. I didn't redshirt. And so I was still kind of young. And as a senior, I wrestled Damian Hahn my senior year of college in the semifinals of the NCAA's consolation semifinals. And then the very next, or 2 weeks later, he wrestled 211 and won University Nationals. And I cut down in that 2 weeks from 180 to 163. And I beat Scott Owen from Northern Illinois, who's 157-pound All-American. I was 184-pound All-American. But I cut down, wrestled 163, and made the world team. We went to the World Championship that year. I believe John Trench was on the team, Andy Bowlby from Oregon State, Jeremy Spates. I'm not going to remember everybody, but so that was the start. Like right out of college, I got to go to the University World Championships, and then I just was like wrestling 163. They sent me to Iran to Tashkent. My first international trip was to Iran. I went with Brian Keck and Dean Morrison. We're the 3 freestyle athletes to go. They sent me to Tehran, no instructions, right out of college. There you go. That was unbelievable to be able to wrestle in the Mecca of wrestling, your first international trip right out of college. And so I loved every minute of that. And I just kept going and going. And, there was years, I was just like, hey, I'm making this happen. I need to go to this international trip, this international trip. And so I was probably basically my whole career, I probably wrestled the most out of everybody every single year. I know leading up to that 08, Cejudo, through the national team, Cejudo, myself, and Tommy Rowland were the people that were getting the most matches in. We were winning, medals at every single tournament we were going to. Maybe not winning the whole tournament, but there wasn't many international tournaments other than Euregan that I wasn't medaling in, and it was just fun. Getting to compete against the best guys in the world. And then eventually 2006 making the world team, and 2007 falling short to Joe Williams in the best of 3. For me, I was on the national team 4 years. 2006, I won the finals against Clint Wattenberg in 2 straight matches. In 2007, I lost to Joe Williams in 3 straight matches. Both times I had to win the mini tournament. 2008, I beat Mo the Wall in 3 matches. And then the next year at 96 kilos, I lost to Jake Varner in the finals in 2 matches. And so I won in 2, lost in 2, won in 3, lost in 3 over the 4 years. It was a roller coaster, but the best time of my life. You're traveling the world, you're competing against the best guys, you're training with the best guys. You're just learning the sport, you're learning culture, you're learning who you are as a person. For me, it was grooming myself for my next career, which was eventually coaching. I didn't know where that would be, but I was fortunate enough, as I was in that last year of my competitive career, I went from Michigan to Colorado Springs. I didn't make the national team. I wasn't happy with my situation there. And so that's when out of the blue, I said, hey, I'm moving to Russia, and I'm going to go learn from the best.
Okay, now that's exactly what I've been dreaming of this story of Russia, because it's probably maybe besides, making the decision to wrestle at the next level and enjoying it, but taking a new mental mindset into some place. And did you spend, now the way I understand, you spent a year about Russia, is that correct?
I did, yes.
Okay, let's have your perspective. Now, tell me how you got into going to Russia and kind of your inspiration of what your thought process was going in, and what did you learn along the way?
Yeah, so leading up to that, 2008 hit, and it just wasn't financially feasible for me to stay at Michigan. And I'd been there for a long time, and so I was like, I'm going to Colorado Springs. Zeke had taken over. He hired Brandon Slay, who was brand new to coaching, and him and I at that time didn't see eye to eye. He retired at 24 as a gold medalist, and I was 29 years old, trying to make a second Olympic team. And so we just didn't see eye to eye, and that's fine. And I was like, look, if I'm going to compete and I'm going to try to make a run for 2012, I am going to wrestle against the best people in the world. I'm going to put myself in the best situation. I was like, if I'm not getting paid in Colorado Springs, I left Michigan because of the financial crisis. And I was like, look, this is my only time. I didn't have a family. I'm like, this is my only time I could do whatever I want. And so while I was living in Colorado Springs, I was like, I want to go there for a month before Euregan. And so I told USA Wrestling that. They were like, that's a great idea. Go check it out. And so it got me out of Colorado Springs.
Who are your connections? How did you get connections over in Russia?
So when I told USA Wrestling I want to go, they contacted Paul Kieblitz, who was our translator he's been an official and translator for USA Wrestling for the longest time. Speaks so many languages, Polish, Russian. So he calls the Russian Wrestling Federation and gets a hold of them, and they were like, yeah, we would love to have him for a month. He could train in 2 places. He could train in Dagestan, or he could train in Vladikavkaz and Ossetia. One's Muslim and one's Christian. We suggest he goes to the Christian if he's a Christian. And so they took me to Vladikavkaz, and that's how I ended up there.
Okay.
And so for me, I had went there the first time in 2007 after winning the trials. You're on the World Cup team the next year, and that is where the World Cup was. And so I wrestled at the World Cup in 2007. Wrestled Adam Satiev, And that's my first experience in this.
Wow.
Not good wrestling, it was wrestling Olympic champion. I think we had that first match, USA Russia first match. Our team got kicked in the butt, but I come out blazing. I beat them 6-1 in the first period. And then the subsequent period, second period, we go into it and it's a battle. It was like maybe 2-1 or 2-0. And then the last period, we were just basically fist fighting. And it was like 1-0. And both of us just like could barely walk off the mat. It was a fight. But yeah, that was my first time there. I ended up going back there to train, so I was semi-familiar with it. After the month, my last practice leading up to the Oregon, somebody shot in on me, and I ended up defending them, or we went hip to hip like a wizard kick, and I think we hit hip to hip somehow, and I got a hip pointer, so I couldn't wrestle, but I could barely walk. But I spent a month there, and I was like, that was unbelievable. And the coach comes up to me at Oregon. He goes, hey, look, I know you couldn't wrestle. We had a translator. This is Malik Tadiev, one of the great coaches of Ossetia, runs the program, controls a lot of oversees the kids stuff, and who's coaching them. His cousin beat Jamil Kelly in the Olympic finals for Ukraine. And so he comes up to me and he tells me, he said, hey, do you know Alexander Leopold? And I said, yeah, I know who he is. He goes, well, he calls me up on the phone and he says, Coach, could you give me your training program? And he said, yeah, no problem. So he sends him his training program. He said, this is it. Follow this for a training camp. And day to day, training session, all written out. And he looks at it and goes, this isn't it. And he calls it back and goes, hey, send me your real program. I know this isn't it. And he's like telling me this story, and he goes, he throws it out. He doesn't do it because he didn't see it. He didn't believe it. On paper, it doesn't look real. And so he tells me this, and he said, you saw that. You saw what we do. That's what we do. Leading up to the best tournament in the world, you just witnessed our training. And so he goes, I can make you a champion. Come to Russia. I also want to teach you, because he said, right now, you guys aren't doing well, and I need somebody to go to America and make a rivalry again. Obviously, one person can't do that, but he wanted me to start people thinking, start spreading certain principles of the sport. And so he said, come and I'll teach you the whole thing. And so I went another month. So that was January after the Olympics. So January of 2009 was the first month I went there. Didn't get to participate in Oregon. Ending up pulling out of Cuba a couple weeks later. So I was bummed I had to miss that. But I was so pumped about the experience. Lost to Jake Barner, or husband has Colorado Springs. I lost to Pat Cummins. Barner was number one. I had staph infection, didn't wrestle at the Open. And so I ended up, my first competition back was Beat the Streets against Cal Terminera. That was first Beat the Streets when it was on the USS Intrepid.
Yep.
And so I ended up going to the trials. I lost to Pat Cummins on the clinch in the third period in the semis. But because Barner was sitting out, I lost my opportunity to make the national team. And so I was fourth in the country for the first time not in the national team. And that right after that, I went back in October, and at that point I got the visa. The following year, I finished off my year in Colorado Springs. Then so the first year I was in Michigan, second time I was in Colorado Springs. Then I went after the World Championships of September 2010, I ended up staying all the way through till June, essentially.
Yep. Were you with a host family, or do you have to find a way to make money? How do they do that?
So
they have
after
a training center?
Well, so they have a center. So after the trials, when I lost to Cummins, I went on. Well, they asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Next year." I said, "I'm staying in Colorado Springs, but in September I'm moving to Russia." I didn't know how it was going to happen. Chael Sonnen heard the interview, and he reached out to me, and he gave me the initial money that I needed to get there.
That's awesome.
And so that was an unbelievable, surprise gift. And then when I was there, Mike Novogratz was like, hey, I'm really impressed with what you're doing, trying to learn and do something different to further your career because I want to help you. So he sent me money. And so through those two people, I was able to pay for the whole trip. Tournament winnings helped me, have fun, go out to eat, spend time with my friends, visit family in Europe. And, but yeah, we had a training center. So I had 3 meals a day. Sometimes I was the only one. Sometimes there was soccer team would be there before big games to stay away from fans, friends, people like that, keep the distractions away. Sometimes foreign teams would come. I invited these Indian guys. They started coming, like Yogi Dutt, Shashil Kumar, just so many people in and out of the training center, really only for wrestling. They had a sauna in there, 3 meals a day. These ladies cooked all the time. Same breakfast almost every day, porridge, some kind of egg, boiled most of the time.
How did you handle the language? Did you know some Russian now?
I tried to learn Russian. They don't speak a ton of Russian. I ended up getting by. I was telling my wife today, one of the best nights of my life, it happened to be New Year's Eve. Irbek Farniev was my best friend there, a 2003 world champ. He won it in Madison Square Garden when it was in the U.S. He took me to his mother's house in the village where he grew up. Like, I'm talking like probably 40 people in this town. And his mom's got this plot of land. There's a fence around, like a brick fence. She farms it. She has an outhouse, no indoor plumbing. We had a 3-hour conversation. I didn't speak Russian. Like, I don't speak Russian. They speak their own language, Osetian, most of the time. So I couldn't really learn because they're not speaking Russian to each other. But we had a 3-hour conversation making dinner New Year's Eve, which is their Christmas. And I'm with his family, him and his wife, who's pregnant, his uncle, his nephew, his mom, and I'm just at this place, and you just communicate. I don't know. It's hard to experience that, but you understand each other, but you don't have to understand the language, right? You have respect. You understand the room. You understand body language. Some people spoke English. I ended up dating a girl who spoke English there. She wanted to practice the English, and it was just fun to have somebody outside of wrestling to hang out with. Just going to restaurants and experiencing the city and the culture. Wonderful people. While I was there, I was at a cafe doing internet, and I was greeted by a CIA agent working with the UN, patrolling the region. He wanted to check in on me, told me he was watching me, wanted to know what I was doing there. And
international spy here, Andy
right?
Hrovat.
It was wild. I started riots. I wrestled at a tournament in the city, and I was wrestling a Chechen, and they were trying to get the Chechen to win. And it was like, we challenged a call. I should have been up by like 4 points. I was down by 4 points, and then they made me lose the challenge. And my coach is like, at the head table, he walks down, and he's like, because you're coached by your peers at these smaller tournaments, but it's an unbelievable tournament. It's in the Caucasus Mountains. It's the Soslan and Diaz. And so the main coach comes down, Mao Diev, and he tells the official, no, you're not doing that to him. He's one of us. And so they rescore it, change it. I'm winning by 4 points. And there was an incident between 2 heavyweights, Chechen and Osetian. And so now this is the second incident between Chechens and Osetians, right? Obviously I'm American, but there was a second incident. The first one created a 45-minute riot. This one, as soon as they raised my hand, the Osetians are chanting, Andy, Andy. And then the Chechens are getting mad who are in the stands. And next thing you know, it's just fight, like guys pulling jackets and just punching down the stage. Like 1,500, 2,000 just men who just wrestled their whole lives, and our fans are in the sport, and they're just fighting, and the riot cops are coming, full riot gear, and they're marching with the batons. And my coach grabs me. He's like, you come out the back He shuffles me out the back door, gives me money, said, go to the restaurant. I walk to the restaurant, I'm in my singlet, a t-shirt. And they're like, you're the director. I said, I'm in this tournament. There's a riot. I need food. And they're like, all right, just come in. And so they fed me. I paid them. I go back, and it was just a wild experience. I would be in I'd be in taxis or hitchhiking, and people would be like, oh, you're the American, you're the wrestler. Do you know John Smith? Do you know Bruce Baumgartner? Because they're wrestling fans, and they've seen those people come to their little village, wrestling in the World Cup or dual meets, USA versus Russia. They love the sport, and they opened up their whole city to me, and it was just an unbelievable experience.
No doubt.
So tell us a little bit about what you saw over there. How guys or how kids got started in the sport, right? I mean, obviously it's so ingrained in the culture, right from a start. But I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say it happens differently than it does here.
Oh, absolutely. So he had known I wanted to coach, which is why he told me to teach me. And so he exposed me to every level. He exposed me to youth, just playing around and learning how to just rotate their arms and functionally move their body, play, roll, do stuff like that. Nothing competitive at the young age. Then, he would take me to the middle school, junior high practice, and I would see how they would learn their technique, how they would break it down. They took me to local competitions for that age group. No parents, no yelling, just kids. They wrestle. They actually pay them on the award stand, which is pretty cool. I go down to a weight class, and I'm shaking the kids' hands. I'm giving them envelopes with cash in it. It was a cool experience. And then I saw the cadet juniors, how they did it. And then obviously I was every day with the Olympic level, and I wrote a journal and I wrote down everything I observed, the patterns of training times, food, diet, week cycles, month cycles, yearly cycle. And so I took all that, obviously the practice situations, everything like that, wrote the practices down, and I had that journal for a long time, and I gave it to Chief Information Officer, a guy that loved data. I gave it to him, and he was the one who looked at it years after I left, and he was the one who came up with base wrestling off the training. He was like, this is the 4 things you guys do every day. You battle, some kind of battle, whether it's the Russian basketball that we played every Wednesday or Saturday, the battle of live attacks, the battle of a match, the battle of live situations, going into the room on off weeks where you're training yourself, just long battles. So you have different battles, you have different athletic stuff you need to work on. You have to be an athlete, so the dynamic warm-up, the circuit that you do at the end, the skill, how they break it down. For what I understood, their skill is based on 2 things, control and direction. You have what you can control and what directions you can go in. So your direction of attack, those attacks lead you to 5 positions. Those 5 positions lead you to 18 situations. And those 18 situations roughly have 72 finishes. You have 2, you have more, but you have 2 really high percentage finishes in every one of those situations. So out of the 18 situations, you have 36 offensive finishes, and you have 36 defenses that you need to know. And that was pretty much the sport. And so that's the skill. And then the exercise is what you're doing. So the games you're playing, the situations you're doing, the warm up, the circuits is the exercise, the scheduling of the training is the exercise. So your weekly training cycles, your monthly training cycles, how you peak for a tournament, end of season, everything like that. And so those were the 4 areas that I had to explain what I learned, and I was able to take those 4 areas and make the sport pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, you need to write a book.
My wife told me that this week.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's so much that, when we step back and we look at, how kids learn and how, we kind of have directed them. I think sometimes we put ourselves going backwards, right? We're spending a lot more time at these youth levels, and then we're going to go to tournaments, and we're not spending as much time, just learning how to move, right? I mean, if nothing else. It's one thing that really, when I remember when I got off the phone with Jake that one night and just watching the stuff you guys have done, and since then it really settled in my mind. So I just was, kind of curious if that all came from what you learned in Russia, or if it was a evolution.
No, all of it. So, like I said, so that was a couple years after I had that notebook. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. I retired. I had all this knowledge. I had it written down. And that year I lost to Pat Cummins. No, not Pat. My last year, I don't know. My last year, when I lived in Russia, when I came back, I was wrestling Lee Munster the week before in the simulation tournament. Sprained my MCL, lost to Quentin Wright first round of the trials, and I was like, I'm done. I sprained my MCL that year. I sprained and tore my rotator cuff. I'm like, man, I'm 31. I learned everything I needed to learn. But that's in June. I couldn't get a college job, and I didn't know what I was going to. I was preparing to try for the 2012 Olympics, but I was like, it just felt right. I was like, I don't need to force something and hurt my body, and I didn't have anything to prove. And so I retired the year before the Olympics and told Zeke, and Zeke was like, hey, we're starting these training centers. I want you involved, so you're going to be at every national team camp. And I was basically his right-hand man while he was at U.S. Wrestling. And he told me, was like, I had a lot of stuff like you. I had a lot of experience and knowledge through the Sunkist kids. But when I retired, they didn't include me. And so I didn't get to have that advantage to go full steam ahead. He goes, I'm including you right away because you have this. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
Catching here.
Yeah, we good?
Yep.
And so he was telling me about the training centers, and I just told Michigan, I said, hey, I'm coming back. I don't know what to do. This is my home. So everybody I knew lived other than Cleveland. And we came up with the idea at the time because Zeke was starting the RTCs, and I was like, look, I'll coach. It'll be limit. Like, obviously they couldn't pay me. There's a new phase of fundraising athletes and coaches' salaries. And so I worked part-time with Cliff Keen Athletic, worked part-time with the club, made enough. That first year I just copied what I did in Russia. I didn't know. I just copied it practice for practice. Like, this is it. Like, I'm just going to run these training camps. I'm going to fill in the blanks, but here's the outline. Here's everything. And it wasn't the best understanding of it. And then I really started, once I saw the different sections, I really started to understand and was able to break it down. And I was like, okay, look, athletics was first. The battles were easy. Like, I was like, you have the situations. These are the only situations, right? Like, your 4 attacks, upper body to the right, upper body left, lower body left, lower body right. You attack any part of that body, you're going to either be in a single, a high crotch, upper body, a failed attack, so like front headlock, seatbelt, 50-50 position, or you take them down all the way and now you're on top bottom, right? You hit a blast double and now you're top bottom, right? So those 4 attacks lead to those 5 positions. Those 5 positions, you have high single, medium, side single with an ankle whizzer extended, right? You only have 4 singles that you could do. You have 4 high crotches you could do. So you're controlling the hip, the knee, between the knee and the ankle, right? And so I was like, okay, so I knew those positions, but I didn't really know the whole monthly thing. I did, but I didn't understand the weeks off. And so I blindly did it first year. Second year, I meet Dan Fisher, who was the CIO, looked at the book, ended up being partners with him and his son, Steven Fisher, in Double Leg Ninja base wrestling. Dan mentored me, Jake, his son. His son has a successful clothing company, State and Liberty, that he ended up moving on and doing. But Dan was an unbelievable mentor, and he taught me so much outside of wrestling that helped me understand what I had in wrestling from a systems person. He understood systems, right? And so, so he taught me that part, really taught me to open my mind to understand the whole business side of it, building the business, building the website, building the programming. And, but also at the very same time, I was fortunate enough to have Mike Barwis be introduced into my life with Jake Herbert. And, you know, for those who don't know, Mike Barwis was, started off in wrestling, strength and conditioning at West Virginia, Kerry Colott, Zeke Jones. Zeke introduces me to him. Mike trains me at Michigan, leading up to the Olympics, but I was reintroduced at this time in my life. He left Michigan, so he was Michigan's strength coach. Then he became the strength coach for the Miami Dolphins, New York Mets. And when he was a strength coach for them, he started a franchise of gyms. And that's when he reached out to me. So this was 2013. I retired in 11. And so he reaches out. He goes, I know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. I want you to train my kids and I'll teach you. Right? And I was like, how do you know what I'm doing? He goes, I know what you're doing. Because I know what you're doing. I know what you have. I know the Russian system. I don't know the wrestling part, but I know what they do in the training aspect, in the programming, the monthly stuff, like the off weeks, like how do you do the intense between the high intensity and the low intense practice. And so it's like the daily cycling, the weekly cycling. And so he knew all of that. He knew all the science of it, the science of breaking down the technique. Once I showed him, he goes, okay, this is why this works, right? And so very fortunate enough to meet him and be mentored by him. And so with those two people mentoring me, like I really started getting understanding. And so then I was like, I have something and I could teach it. And so by 2014, 2015, one of my friends that wrestled with Jake and I, Jeff Adamson, from Canada, he wrestled in Saskatoon. He was 2008, 2012 Olympian. And he started a really successful company in Canada called Skip the Dishes. And so he was doing well, calls me up, and they just bought Grubhub in the U.S. And so he called me up and he's like, hey, I want you to work with Saskatoon. I'm gonna pay for you to do this. You're gonna mentor the coach. They don't have enough money for a full-time coach, but Dan, he is a fireman and he's gonna coach a team. And if you could teach him, I'd be thankful. And so he flies me out, and I run the first base wrestling training team outside of Ann Arbor. And so I write his program for the whole year. He follows it. They go from the year before, second in their league, or second last in their league, to second in the country in 1 year following our training system. They couldn't be happier. They're doing with the women and men, producing really good college kids. They finally produced like junior world medalists, and they've also increased their participation. And so, so that was my third year. I knew I had something. I knew I was able to teach it. And then I started giving it to high school teams locally around Michigan. I said, now I have to do another level. And so I went down and I built my first website, and I distributed it to Napoleon High School outside of Jackson, Michigan. And the coaches, I taught them how to run the practices. I taught them all the exercises, all the progressions, everything to do. They ran the program, and they had an unbelievable year. And their kids program has increased year after year, because of the fun aspect and the development aspect instead of the fight and work hard. Hard work's relative to your level of human being and to the level of what you're trying to get to. And so, so I started working with all those programs, but working with those programs, trying to build the RTC, doing fundraising eventually, coaching the high school kids in the spring and summer, coaching the Olympians year round, trying to build Double Leg Ninja. And, we were the first wrestling distributor really to do online direct to the consumer sales, right? Like we took the coach out of it. Like I looked at that industry and I said, how can I make the volunteer coach at a local high school, how can I make his life a little better? I said, I'm going to take this work out of his hands. We're going to let the kids buy the gear. It's going to ship right to them. Coach doesn't have to collect the money. Parents don't have to collect the money. They have to split the gear up. And so I was doing all that, and it ended up being a little too much. And so eventually I stepped back, and I just was building websites and trying to get myself to be the best version of who I was. I got into yoga. I started walking everywhere. And I just reconnected with who I was, and that led me to the Spartan. And now I get to do everything I did with Double Leg Ninja and base wrestling. I get to do it with Joe DeSena, who's built a lot of companies, and he has a passion, and he's somebody that you say, hey, can we do this? And he's like, let's make it happen, right? So just like today, I found out Vermont canceled their high school season, and I'm trying to be like, what could I do for these kids who got their season taken away from them? And it's like, we have the platform, and so we're going to do a wrestling card with the 10 best kids in the state of Vermont, and we're going to put a card together. We're going to do content leading up to the card, so maybe they come to the farm, and I do private lesson with them, and I do like get to know this guy. And so now some of these best seniors could highlight who they are as a person, and they could have a platform to get a match, because with getting their season taken away, it's not right. And so just doing things like that, Joe's like, let's make it happen. Let's do it for these kids. Let's use our platform to build a business, but also to help other people highlight their passion.
Promote wrestling, yes.
Yeah, right.
I don't think you've ever had a problem with motivation or being a high energy guy, but Joe DeSena has got about raised that level many octaves, right? I mean, this is a guy that is always going 100%, 100 miles an hour. And tell us about how you first got there. I think I know a little bit of the story, because I heard Joe on a podcast kind of right as the pandemic kind of started, but tell us how you got to the farm to start with.
Yeah, so I had turned down a lot of jobs because I knew I didn't want to work for somebody. I wanted to work with somebody. And so that was my stipulation, which is why I kept turning jobs down. And in the Cliff King Wrestling Club, I was fortunate enough that I told him, I said, look, I want to work with you. I'm going to give you world-class coaching, but I also need the opportunity to build what I want to build, because without me being able to learn and fail, and going through processes, I was never going to figure it out. Nobody was ever going to tell me how to do something that hadn't been done, right? I had to figure it out and experiment. And yeah, there was wins and losses and good times and bad. But one of the cool things was, with that in mind, for me, the first job I turned down, Rob Cole, right, Cornell. I told him, I said, look, I'm turning this job down, Rob. And he's like, are you renegotiating with Michigan? I said, actually, I'm cutting my salary in half. Like, I'm quitting working with Cliff Keen. And Rob's like, son, that's not how negotiation works. I'm going to offer you double. You go back to Michigan, and they at least match my offer. I'm like, they don't have the money. I was like, but I'm taking this opportunity to go do something on my own. And so I'm grateful for Rob for that interest right away to say, look, you're more valuable than what you're being paid. And I was like, the only one that could create that value is me. And so that's where I got that first initial spark to do it on my own. So that was Rob Cole. I ended up working with Beat the Streets. Jake and I, we talked to our coaches, wanted to give them our program. I'm going to give them my program for life once it's final through Spartan. I'm a true believer in what Beat the Streets does. And so Jeff Marsh and Mike Novogratz all recommended me to Joe. He was looking for a wrestling coach. I was looking for someone to distribute a platform of training. And so my stipulation was I wanted to work with someone, not for someone. And what I didn't know about Joe is that he hates email, because if you can't get what you want in 3 emails, don't email, make a phone call. If you can't get what you want in a phone call, meet in person. And so somebody said, hey, Jeff Marsh was like, you really got to take this call. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll take. And so he introduced us to an email. I got his number was on the email. I just called him. I didn't even respond to his email. I said, hey, Joe, this is Andy Hrovat. He called me back. Who is this? And I was like, Andy Hrovat. Jeff Marsh emailed us. I said, I can't tell you what I do over email. So I figured I'd give you a call. He goes, oh, great. And so I said, here's what I have. Here's what I'll do. I don't really think you'll understand until I come meet you. I'll put you and your kids through some training, and you can see the system I have. And he goes, great. When can you get here? I said, a few days. I said, I'll drive through New York, go hang out with Jeff Marsh, talk to him, get the lowdown on Joe, see what he was about. I only knew him from the Tim Ferriss interview he did. And then, so I ended up going with him, and within the first 5 minutes, he goes, okay, we're in business together, right? And so within 5 minutes, he said what I wanted to hear, and I did going into that meeting what he wanted to hear. No emails, no phone call, come to me, meet me in person, tell me what you're going to do and do it, right? And so that was our first introduction, and we left it at, hey, go meet my doctor in Colorado. She does all of our education platform, so she'll help you organize your content. And he was like, just come to Boston once a month, and you could train my kids, and I want to work with you. And when he said that, I was like, man, like, this guy wants to work with me, right? Like, that's unbelievable. And so something clicked. I went to Michigan first to go meet with Jake to see his interest, and eventually joining the team and just being involved with, because it's his project too, And so by that point, I was like, I'm just moving to Boston. I was like, if I have an opportunity to be around somebody that has built businesses like he has and has the experience he has, why would I pass up that opportunity to have another amazing mentor and person in my life to help guide me in the impact I want to have on the sport? And so I ended up moving to Boston, and that was late February. And I was there like two and a half weeks, and the pandemic and the shutdown started happening. March 16th, we go to the farm. He's like, I had a conversation with him, and I was like, don't you guys have a farm? Everything's shutting down here. And he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. We should just all go to the farm. Sure enough, school's canceled. Him and his wife had the conversation. Hey, Andy, we're going to the farm. I'm like, that's cool. Like, I've been there one time. The first time I met him, he drove me up there for the night. And so we're quarantining, and we're trying to get the understanding of what's going on. And there's no wrestling, no practice. And I was like, he gives me an article. He goes, hey, Andy, this is a gym teacher in England that has 1 million people watching his gym class online. He goes, we're going live in 45 minutes, and you're the guy teaching it. And I was like, cool, I got you. He goes, you do? I said, yeah. I said, it's base wrestling. He goes, it's not wrestling. I said, I know. I said, it's base. It's the first part, physical development. And so I created a class, 30-minute class based on the base principles. So we had a battle. And so how do you battle yourself in an online class? We did 3 30-second all-out goes, right? Whether it be air squats, burpees, push-ups, you name it. We did body weight exercise for 30 seconds as our battle. We switched it up. We did 2 different battles every week. Every 3 weeks, we changed our battles. We did 4 battles a week. We just switched it up every 3 weeks. We worked on athletics, right? And so that was moving the body. What's that?
It's the dream. Be able to do the calisthenics part before you competition and do that. Yep.
Yeah. So we did the calisthenics, right? And then we did skills, right? And the skill was how do you? And I was like, what skills can we work on? I said we could work on balance skills. I said you had inverted balances, right? Like you have so many balances you could do on your arms, like yoga stuff. And I said you have so many one-legged yoga poses that you could teach kids how to balance and build strength. And so the skill at the end of practice was always working on balance. And again, I switched different balances, every couple of days, every couple of weeks, we'd get new balances in, and then we'd bring new ones in and mix it out. We started off these live classes with, just, a few hundred people watching. And next thing you know, our episodes by the end of the quarantine, we did 80 to 90 episodes in a row. After 2 weeks, I trained his 8-year-old and 11-year-old daughter to lead the class. And so I was just an extra. I stood there, and they did the introduction. They did our pledge. They ran the warm up. They ran the circuit. which was upper body, core, legs, body weight. Then they did the battle, which was what I just explained, and then they led the skill. And I empowered his kids to eventually, after the 80, 90 days in a row, we had reached somewhere around 3 to 4 million views of the class,
Wow.
whether it was live or replay. And eventually we filmed in May. We filmed 6 months of the class. It's being edited. When his kids come up in January, they're going to finish the last 4 introductions. And we're going to have 6 months of training for kids to do online. And we're going to distribute that in the Spartan platform. It's where I met my wife. She came and she was doing the cross training. And for the cross training on those classes with yoga, I was like, let's do a little more intense class. What I created, I said, but then the next day we can't, expect them to do hard stuff every day. So I created a yoga class when we did it live on Facebook, but then I invited a professional into the picture to film the class. And so when we're about to distribute our first product of base, and it's an online kids, stay at home, get up and move class. It's not every person could do it. There's a level for everybody. And, I want parents to do it too, because if you're going to expect your kids to do it, you should do it. Right. And I did it for 80 days in a row. I don't expect people to do it that many days, but, you could go in cycles of doing it for 3 weeks and then take a little time off, do it for another 3 weeks. You're teaching kids good habits, you're getting in shape. I left those 90 days and my wife and I ended up going hiking, and we're doing 10, 13 miles a day, and all I did was just these classes, right? Like, that was my most physical movement, but I was in shape. I was able to move. My body was used to doing something every day, and so it was really cool, and that is like the whole Spartan in a nutshell, right? If you could say, like, what is Spartan? It's like, Joe's got crazy ideas, right? And but he empowers you to use what you have. He said, you have this system, use it. And I was like, yes, I do. I told you I could do this, and here it is. I have 45 minutes. And his motto is shoot, fire, aim, right? And his philosophy is, back in the day, you had to aim, fire, shoot, and or aim, shoot, fire, and so you had muzzle loaders, right? So you had time, right? He's like, but with technology and everything, he's like, you just go, 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 go. Eventually, you're going to see something that you already shot, and then you re-aim that, and you're already you're already into it, and then you're getting closer to the target and where you want to be, right? And so that's just being able to do things, fulfill it, and don't worry about if it works or not, because you always want to take a turn. That's life. You're going to keep moving and advancing, and you have a 6 months of class, and then next I have a whole year of wrestling training, and I have coaches education, and so just one thing leads to another, and it couldn't be a better relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where can people find the videos? And where I assume these are all on YouTube. Is there the Spartan Combat channel, or where is it at?
Well, the kids stuff is actually on the Spartan Kids YouTube or the Spartan YouTube, but it's also on the Spartan Facebook page. There's actually 2 full weeks on. They have like a special section on their YouTube page. But yeah, if you scroll down far enough, you'll find the videos. I just realized today I'm just going to have somebody at Spartan download them all, and we can finally put them up in like one place to have the free ones. But the paid ones, once the editor gets the last 4 introductions, it wasn't until we talked to some mothers, my wife and I, they were like, if your husband's doing the introductions, the kids aren't going to be, like drawn in right away. The content's great with the kids, but get the kids involved. And so we realized we had to reshoot the intros and have the kids do the intros. So now the kids are talking to the kids and like, hey, I'm a Spartan kid. Let's join me on today's workout. So those will be on the Spartan regular Spartan website. This year, Spartan Combat, we just hired Joe Kania, formerly with Flow. He is going to be building our social media and help us build the content for the base library. And we are going to be in the process of updating the website, the Spartan Combat website, and that's my project. Joe's the social media guy. We're gonna have we have a guy, Mike Evans. He's the e-commerce. He started Spartan e-commerce, Spartan Combat e-commerce, and we're gonna organize the website. We're gonna have the e-commerce side. We're gonna have our social channels. But for my side, the website is gonna be, the 4 parts of the website is base, and it's gonna be the live matches that we have. It's going to be an archive of the live Spartan RTC matches. So that's the battles. It's going to be, we're going to have some battles with the Spartan RTC where they're doing battles that a coach would see his team do in practice. So like live situations from a high single, or live situations from an extended high crotch, or over-under positions. And we'll get some of the Spartan RTC people to post those matches up. And so you'll be able to see them do these battles. And then we're going to have the athletic part. So like, how do you get a kid who doesn't know how to move? Like, and what resources do you have? And so they're going to have the progressions of our warm up. They're going to have different circuits they could do on their at home. And the coaches have circuits they could do at the end of practice with the team. Then we're going to have our skill breakdown, which are the 4 attacks, the 5 positions, 18 situations, 72 finishes. We're going to have all that on the website as well, under the skill, and then the exercise is just going to be the library of all of that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so my whole goal is to be able to, because I've always thought with the coaches in mind, I led with them, and I said, because Joe wants the coach's education, I said I want the coach's education to be less than an hour. I don't want somebody to have to listen to me for 7 hours, 14 hours, 100 hours, right? Like, what's a 100-hour coach's course? Coaching is application. I'm going to say, coach, if you follow these principles of base, whether it be the pledge, the understanding of the 4 sections, the battle effects, skill and exercise, what is involved in each one of those sections, if you could understand that, I could tell you where your kids are going to get better if you could just do the warm-up for 21 days. If you do the base wrestling warm-up for 21 days, I'll show you exactly where your kids are going to get better. And there's no reason why you're going to look at your team and be like, wow, 2 kids on my team could do bridge kicks day 1, day 21. I got 12 kids doing bridge kicks. Okay, if I have a whole team doing bridge kicks, are we going to be better? Yeah, I'm going to keep doing this warm-up, right? So I'm going to show them, you do this warm-up, your team's going to be more athletic, they're going to be in better shape, and they're going to be able to understand how to do it for themselves. I have a kid who's hasn't even wrestled a whole year. I do personal training with 2 kids. Brian is his dad works at Spartan. They're my next door neighbor. He could do the warm up, the base warm up. He could do the full 20 minutes, knows everything to do on his own. And so coach says, hey, warm up. We have a tournament. He's invited for a tournament, warm up. There's no question. What's Brian going to do? He's going to do the warm up that made him a super athlete. He could do backflips, front flips, and everything in between. And so that's my goal, is to limit me having to teach and say, coach, this is where you do this challenge, you do this offense, defense, slide to the attack. You'll see how much better your athletes are getting to get to the leg. You'll see how better your athletes are defending somebody's attacks, because that game shows you the strategies and tactics of the sport. Right? Early bird gets the worm, second mouse gets the cheese. Are you on offense? Are you going to set the trap to get them coming to you so you could counterattack and score? Right? And so I could explain that to a coach less than an hour, give them the structure to run it and to see the success, right? Do 21 days. After 21 days, you can see where your kids are getting better at the battles, where they're getting better technically, and they could actually explain it to you. They could say, coach, these are the 5 positions. These 5 positions have 18 situations. Here's all 18 situations. I know how to control. Here's my hands in this situation. Here's my hands in this situation. They can show you that. So you know they're understanding. And then once they understand how to control that situation, you can say, well, do you know a finish from this situation? No. Okay, well, here's 2 of them. I'm going to show you these 2. You're going to work on these 2. You're going to get really good at these 2. You're going to drill it. You're going to repeat it. because grilling makes it automated in your mind. And so I want coaches to be able to see that, apply it, understand it. If they take the whole system, great. If they take bits and pieces, they say, hey, I like to do it this way for this. I've had success, great. But if I can introduce something that could have success in another part, then I want them to be able to be like, this is amazing. And for the kids, I want them to be able to take ownership in their progression through the sport, which is, are you physically capable, right? Because if you can't do our warm-up, you have a physical limitation. And if you have a physical limitation, there's things you can't do. And I would really like to tell people, get rid of your physical limitations, because, you know, the sport of wrestling, give yourself that full advantage, right? A backflip may not win you a national championship, but it's going to make you an athlete who can win a national championship. It's going to give you the confidence. It's going to give you the body movement, the awareness, the spatial awareness when you're scrambling. And so a lot of it is for make the coach's life easier, but also to allow the coaches to understand that their kids could take ownership of it. Like, let them know what the plan is, because if they know what the plan is, they could be prepared. And if they're prepared and they know the expectations, then you're limiting places of failure and misunderstanding and miscommunication.
I like it.
I do too. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. It makes so much sense. You know, I hope we get a lot of. I hope you get a lot of people that, you know, take your advice and jump in and, you know, one little piece at a time and just keep moving forward. I think we can get to your and Jake's goal of having 1 million little ninjas running around this country, right?
Yeah, that is our goal. And it's funny, when I went to meet with Jake after meeting Joe, we found that sheet, and you know, Joe's goal is to influence 100 million people to better their lives physically. You know, and he believes in that. And you know, I sent him that goal of ours, and you know, the amount of teams we wanted to work with and the countries we want to be able to help. You know, it just aligns with all the principles of Spartan, and it's just going to be so fun to be able to do this. And again, with, you know, people could look at, you know, Vermont canceling the season is a bad thing, but for us, I think it's an opportunity to promote the sport, to promote the athletes, and to bring the community together to say, look, this is sustainably like how we could grow, and how we as a community and the diehards who understand the benefits of wrestling and the impact it could have on other people, and we could take that and say, here's our chance to introduce a lot more people into the sport. And so that's our goal. I know that's your goal from hearing you guys from the get-go. Right. And it's just going to be fun to be able to see that, because when we had that first part of the conversation, I really wanted to be adamant. Like, my biggest goal is that base wrestling was built to train the average, but there's things within the program that give room for the greats to grow themselves. And that's psychologically the best thing you could do for a person is don't have your thumb on them the whole time saying you're winning because you're doing everything this way. It's like, I say do 80% this way. I'm not going to watch you do the last 20%. You do that on your own, because when you win, you're winning because of what you're doing. And they take ownership of that, and they're doing the morning stuff. They're doing the circuits on their own. And as a coach, if you can empower those people and give room for them to grow instead of always grinding them and taking 100% from them, they'll have more to give to you. And it also creates the environment of the room of like, hey, that's not expected. If you're here to get in better shape and to learn the sport, and we want you in this room, right? Because you're going to bring something to this room, because you're going to challenge yourself. And if you're challenging yourself and you want to improve, you're making everybody else positive. Like, you don't have to be a national champ for me to watch you do your first front handspring and be like, you've been practicing that for 3 months. That's amazing that you've been able to do that. That to me is like, I could see that and I could be like, damn, that's what commitment looks like, right? Like, this person is like, I may be a good wrestler and I've done it for a long time and it's easy for me now, but dang, that person came in here for 3 months, tried to front handspring every day for 3 months, and they finally got it. It's like, that's victories. That's success. You know, it's not always winning and losing. It's creating that environment to have everybody push each other. And, you know, wrestling's a community, right? And that's what you're looking for.
So I know John's going to want to start wrapping this up here. We could go on all night long, I have no doubt. But I do want something that was just sparked in what you were talking about, you know, where base wrestling was meant to, you know, help the average. But I know you've had some great success with some pretty high level athletes. And I know I heard you tell a story one time about Logan Massa, and you know, what kind of made you be able to make sense to him what he needed to do to get to that next level.
Yeah. So, I didn't want to be a dick, but I embarrassed him. You know, he was so stubborn. It was like breaking a racehorse, you know? But, you know, I come in, his dad's like, I want you to train him. And I come in, I'm like, what'd you do last week? Because I put him through a practice and he hated it. And I was like, what'd you do last week? And he was like, oh, I wrestled 45 minutes. I said, anyone score on you? No. I said, okay. How about Tuesday? We wrestled for an hour. Anyone score on you? No. I'm better than everyone. Nobody in this room is going to score on me. And, you know, he's going on. And I'm like, okay. So I said, he was still small at the time. I said, so you're wrestling 145 pounds, juniors. I said, who you got to beat? He goes, Aaron Pico. I said, oh, Aaron Pico's great. I said, I've seen him finish thousands of single legs. I said, so from now to junior trials, I said, I bet you Aaron Pico's finishing thousands of single legs in practice. He's like, yeah, he probably is. He's better than everybody, but not me. I said, well, odds are he's going to get to your leg in the finals. I said, odds are he's really good. I said, you haven't practiced one single defense all last week. I said, did you get better defending a single last week? No, I beat everybody. I'm better than everybody. I said, I asked you, did you defend a single? No. I said, so you're planning on going to the junior finals, trying to wrestle in the finals of the junior trials, and you haven't defended one single. I said, he gets to your leg and he has a single. How are you going to defend it? You don't even know what you're doing. And he's like, I'll defend it. I'm better than him. I said, that's not an answer. What do you do? I said, you haven't even spent any time training in this position. He's like, oh, I'm just going to beat him. And I'm like, but how? You haven't trained it. Like, you're doing nothing. He's like going on, and finally, he was so mad. And the next time, it was like 2 days later, I come back. He goes, all right, I get it. He goes, I'll do it your way. And I was like, well, I just want you to be comfortable in the positions. I said, if I know I'm wrestling someone good in a single, I'd like to at least have some time defending singles, not just beating people up with my hands. And so we ended up having a great relationship. And he was the first high school kid that moved to Michigan while he was in high school, so I could train him before the college practice. And he was able to come into Michigan with such great experience. And, you know, he had a whole college season of training partners, training, you know, in the base system. And he learned a lot, right? And it was so fun to finally see that first kid that you mentored come in and really excel.
Yeah, that's great. I just think, you know, it makes so much sense. You know, getting, you know, these single positions that become so important, and you're right. The kids that are really good in high school, we'll say, and it's probably the same thing through the youth level. They never really get pushed, and then we see them get to the college room, and all of a sudden, you know, things change because no one's ever rode them, and no one's ever, you know, taken them down in 5-6 years. I mean, that's, you know, I say that my kid is wrestling in a Division II school, and I don't think he gave up 3 takedowns his last 3 years of high school, and we went to the first tournament and he got taken down, you know, 7 times in 2 matches. You know, it was like, yeah, okay, now we know. But it's great when those kids can have an awakening that this is you know, these are those little things you need to work on, you know. And it's back to the, less than even the basics, right? It's just working on one position and being comfortable there and winning.
No, for sure. It's super comfortable, right? And I talked about technique. It's control and direction. The power in the sport is not in understanding the direction of attack and direction of finish. The power in the sport is understanding the control. And so it's not controlling the, leading up to the situation, right? Because that's just hand fighting. It's stance motion around the mat. But real wrestling starts after the attack, right? A real attack leads you to a situation. If you can control the situation and you can control it forever and you can finish anytime you want, that's power, right? It's not getting into that situation, not understanding the situation and trying to make a rash decision and just doing something to do something, right? And you see a lot of people that they just don't understand the position. They get in it for the first time and they're making bad choices. And so that to me really helps with that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So true. Well, I tell you what, I love listening to it, and I'm very interested in following up and following your stuff because I've kind of knew about what you're doing, but man, it's way deeper than what I had in mind. It's awesome. No, Bill and I discussed it before we had a talk with you, I think last week and stuff, and he said that you have a system that you need to look into, and I am so pumped at looking into it. So. Nope, I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I never will be done learning wrestling. So
I hear that. So
Definitely.
I would love to talk with you guys again, and keep you guys updated with what we have going on because we're a community builder, right? And it's the grassroots. It's connecting with people like you that are within the wrestling community, and right, your community is in the Dakotas, and right now I'm in Vermont. So, being able to, reach those communities and just collaborate and work together and, just to have an influence that's why I'm in it, right? That's what helps me every day.
Yeah, absolutely. This is I think this would be a lot of fun.
Well, I think we'll make it right about to an hour and a half. So I'm going to, these quick fire questions, rapid fire questions I got for you just to learn a little bit inside with you. Okay, here's question number one. I always start off with, are you Gatorade or Powerade?
Water.
Water. Okay. And so this next question might not be good either. Popsicles or dilly bars?
I'll do a popsicle all day in the summer.
Okay. Saturdays or Sundays?
Oh, I love Sundays.
Okay. Mama's boy or rebel?
Both.
Very good. Are you fast-paced or consistently slow?
Both too, right? Like wrestling wise, talking, you guys fast paced could be, but life super slow.
Okay, that's perfect. I love to see people have different explanations for everything. Okay, would you want your athletes to be physical and a physical athlete or a mental athlete?
Oh, I love them both too. That's so hard.
Yeah.
I like it mental, like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm the same way. I love being physical at times on the mat, but if you don't have the mental aspect, you're not going to make it either. Okay, how about your favorite holiday?
Favorite holiday? Man, that's another tough one. I love New Year's right now.
Okay,
it's just a good time of year. I love, the long day, the short days, long nights. Gathering your thoughts from the past year and dreaming big about the new year
and being thankful, you betcha, for everybody for the whole year. You betcha, even if it's 2020 being gone, I'll be thankful it's gone. Definitely. Okay, now I'm going old school a little bit here. Dan Gable or Cael Sanderson?
I'm a Cael guy. Got to compete against him, and his career has been amazing.
Yep. Favorite number?
Favorite number? 3.
Okay. Favorite move to show?
Favorite move to show. Currently, my favorite one is single leg shelf.
Okay. Okay. And then the best wrestler. Now this is tough. You might have to go top 3. Best wrestler you've ever wrestled.
That is tough, right? Man, Cael for sure. U.S. Cael Cormier. Those two U.S. for sure. International. best ever at the moment, Georgie Katoyev, 2007, when he basically went unscored upon at the Worlds. Wow. He was a beast of a man.
Okay. Is there any habit that you've learned in wrestling that you still do every day?
Oh man, well, just to be active, right? Wrestling taught me to be an active person, and I don't think I've stopped since I was 5.
Okay. Well, one of mine, I always say I still check my weight every day. I'm not even wrestling. There's no purpose. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. So, and then I let Bill. He's always got a couple questions at the end. That's awesome.
Well,
I love personality.
I just have one question that and I don't want to bring up any painful moments, but tell me about a guy like Salas from Cuba. I mean, here's a guy that you wrestled in 2008. I don't know if you wrestled him before then or not. And then he's wrestling in 2019. I mean,
yeah.
How's the guy do that? I mean, this is it's an amazing thing to me.
Yeah. Also, by the way, Romero has to be added to my list.
Okay.
I wrestled him in the finals of the 03 Pan Am. But no, so Salas, I did that to myself. I go down to Pan Am Games in 2007 because Joe Williams is hurt. I go to the Pan Am Games. I beat the Cuban. I end up losing this Canadian, but in the finals, I beat this Cuban. I tech fouled him because Romero defected at the Worlds prior, and so I wrestled this Cuban, and I tech fouled him, and they're like, we can't have this guy getting tech fouled and losing to an American, and so they ended up replacing him with Salas. We were already qualified for the World. Salas qualifies. I never even saw him or heard of him. And now I got this brand new kid. I mean, if I would have taken it easy on the other guy, I probably would have had the other guy, right? But, because Cuba, they don't often change their guys. Once you're in, you're in. But I whooped that dude so bad that they were like, nope, we got this new kid. He's taking over. And but he was so good. At the time, it was really painful losing to him at the Olympics. But he, just being able to watch him, I mean, he's medaled at multiple weights. He's medaled years and years in between. He used to whoop on Jake too, like he did on me. He's just a tough person to wrestle. His hips and his athleticism, his attitude, he's tough.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. I still enjoy. I mean, you just enjoy watching him today. He's not wrestling an American.
Well, I'm going to make my last comments because we've been over that hour and a half zone. But I tell you what, love talking to you. I am just amazed at the names that come out and the memories that I have of watching you wrestle. And I appreciate you taking your time to come on here and talking wrestling with Bill and I. So again, my last comments usually, make sure everyone gets out and promotes the sport and stay positive, guys, no matter what's happening.
Absolutely.
Bill?
I love it.
Bill, your last comments? Oh, it's Bill froze. I think Bill might have froze for once here.
I froze up for a second. I'm back though. Yeah. Hey, same thing. We didn't talk about a whole lot of high school wrestling. We got some wrestling getting started again here pretty quick. Class B teams got a big tournament here in North Dakota on Saturday. So we are lucky to have some wrestling going on here. We're going to start seeing some college wrestling this weekend. The first Division I wrestling in the country, right here in Fargo. Got a quadrangular with 4 pretty good D1 teams. Oregon State, we get to see Terry Pendleton. Get to see Pendleton come back. We get to see South Dakota State, Missouri, and NDSU. So that'll be live on Flow. Probably be on Beck TV here locally, in a lot of North Dakota schools or North Dakota TV stations, and hopefully some of us will be there live. But get out and watch some wrestling and support the sport. I would recommend everybody to get in touch with what Andy's doing and follow up and just try to spend a little bit of time learning.
Definitely. And Andy, some last words from you.
Yeah, on my side, Wrestling Front Spartan RTC is wrestling on January 8th against North Carolina State on Flow Wrestling. And it's just some really big matches. I think Dake, Vito, Dean, Yanni. They're all wrestling, and I think there's five main fights and some undercard fights, and these matches between the RTCs are just it's a great opportunity right now. It's not a lot of wrestling, and so yeah, tune into that too. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, that's it, and thank you guys for having me. It was amazing to be able to share my story with you guys, and love your guys' passion for the sport. And again, if I can help anybody in North South Dakota, you guys can reach me at Andy.Hrovat@Spartan or any social media platform, and I'll do what I can to help anybody. So thank you guys for giving me the platform to speak.
Oh yeah, anytime, Andy. I tell you what, I'll have you on again, and we'll visit some more, because I like hearing, and I'd like to get more. Like I said, learn more and more is just better for me.
Awesome. Well, you guys enjoy your night.
You betcha. Makes my soul feel good. Like I said, talking wrestling. You guys, everybody out there, you guys have a great night, and that is Dakota Grappler tonight. We'll see you again next week, but I tell you what, we're going to make a couple more shows during the week as we start moving in, because we got about 6 to 7 weeks of wrestling left in North Dakota, and we'll have our state tournament. People are out competing, so stay tuned. I'll make sure to put some stuff out on social media, both Facebook and YouTube, and also over on dakotagrappler.com. So feel free, guys, contact me anytime. Promote the sport. Have a good night.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys.